Hey everybody, we are back and we're talking about different strategies and what they look like when you actually go to develop your intervention plan for your program, right? So let's get started. So the strategies in your program will be presented in the form of your curriculum. This is the planned series of activities or lessons, right? So you can think about like our curriculum for our courses. It's not like we're just teaching you all willy-nilly. We have a curriculum that we use for each of our sessions, and we have objectives that we're trying to meet for each session. So this is our curriculum. It's our planned series of activities or lessons. And this is what the population will be taught or exposed to in each of those sessions, right? And remember, we're using those different strategies to meet those needs. Alrighty. So, what is a unit plan? The purpose of a unit plan is to give an overview of that curriculum, those different topics and strategies that you plan to use to achieve your program objectives. So remember, we wrote our mission, our goal, and our objectives, and now we are developing what we're going to do to meet the program objectives. So this is going to be an overview of what your whole program looks like, right? So you're going to develop a unit. It's also known as a block plan, a unit plan for your program, right? So we're looking at the scope, the breadth and depth of the material, and also the sequence. Remember, it needs to be, sequential. So working from the most simple to more complex material. And the sequence is defined in the order in which the material is presented. And sometimes topics don't necessarily, go hand in hand. Maybe you have different information, but it still needs to be from simple to complex. So that is your unit plan. Let's talk about what's actually included within that unit plan. So you need to have a topic name for each of your sessions. So a lot of times these kind of are based on a theme. You might have a theme for each session, and it's going to probably be related to what you're going over that day in your session, or what activities you're doing, what you're learning. So for example, this first one, let's label it. You might be talking about nutrition labels that day, right? Get your mind right. Maybe talking about meditation. So general objectives for each session. So these are what we're going to learn from each of our sessions. So this first one, it may be that session is the let's label it. And the objective is going to be to increase skills in reading nutrition labels, right? And that objective matches our theme, our topic name. The next one, to teach the stress coping strategies of meditation, to increase confidence in working as a team through a collaborative activity. So our message or our activities, and we're going off of the example of get your mind right and teaching about meditation for stress coping. Let's think about what we're actually wanting to give the participants. What are the messages? What are the actual activities that we're going to do within this session? So in this session, participants will learn the benefits of meditation, the process steps of meditation, and practice that technique with a partner. So for activity 1, you may do some health education, health communication here, explaining the benefits of meditation. Activity 2, demonstration, so demonstrating how to meditate. And then activity 3, the participants partner up and they practice the meditation together. So you see how those all work together to meet that objective of teaching stress coping strategies of meditation. So that kind of shows you how that works within the session of your unit plan, and you'll have different sessions, 6 different sessions within your unit plan. So here's an example of a unit plan, and again, it's giving you an overview of what you're going to do for each session. So like this first day, this is for a program called Just Move It. The first session, you're going to be active every day, right? Understanding what is recommended for physical activity. Teaching them how to do a warm-up and a cool-down, performing those warm-up and cool-downs, and including an activity for a word search, right? It's giving you an overview of what you're doing. Now just note that you can write unit plans in different ways. We have a template for you guys to use. but they can look a little bit different just depending on your program and what is listed here. But it needs to give that overview, what you're teaching them, what is being accomplished in each session. So your unit plan, remember that unit plan is in kind of overview of all your sessions, to the individual session plan. So it's broken down even further, guys. And I know for those of you that are not planners and not very nitpicky and not very detail oriented, this is going to be a little difficult, right? You're not used to thinking through each and every step. But it's super important for a program because you can't just go in without a plan. So the unit plan provides that overview of the entire program, whereas the session plan is very detailed, and it's a detailed description of exactly what will be done. And this includes every single resource that you're going to use. So if you say you're going to include a word search, there needs to be a word search there, right? That's included as your resource. If you're going to use pedometers, so tracking your steps, what kind of pedometer are you going to use? What's the cost to those? How many are you going to have to buy, right? Thinking through everything that you have to use for each and every session. So the purpose of the session plan is to communicate what you want to accomplish in each session, right? We know what we're going to accomplish for the program because we developed those mission goal and then objectives for the program. But now we have to create objectives for each and every session. And this is to make sure that we're staying on track. And if you think about it, we're going from, we came from the top down, but this is now working at the bottom to make sure that we're aligning what we're doing with our overarching goals, right? And so this is including how you plan to accomplish those session goals, session objectives. So elements of the session plan. I just mentioned you're going to write more objectives. Yay! You need a cognitive, behavioral, and affective objective for each session. These are not the same as your program objectives. I'm going to say that one more time. You already wrote program objectives. You will now have to write session objectives. 3 objectives, cognitive, behavioral, and affective, for each session, right? We have 6 sessions. You have to write 3 for each of those. And they're relating to what you're actually doing in those sessions. They're not based on the entire program, right? You need to have a theme for your sessions. You need to tell us how it's going to be organized. So are they individual activities? Are they in groups of 4? Are they in an open space? Do they have seats around a table? Is it more of like a lecture style where there's just rows of chairs? You know, how is it going to be organized? Interest building. What's going to draw them in? What's the hook? What kind of equipment and materials are needed? Do you need a computer with PowerPoint, right? Are you going to give them paper handouts? Do they need pens? All kinds of things, right? We have so many little equipment and material things that cannot be overlooked because let's say you wanted them to do a activity using paper and you forgot that they need pens and pencils and you show up to do your program. Whoops, you're kind of out of luck, right, to do that. So we have to plan for every single material and resource that's needed for our programs. Major session activities, the introduction, the demonstration, what are we practicing, what are we applying, right? What are the actual activities, what are we doing? The time schedule, so we have to think about our time constraints. If you have a 1-hour block of time, how are you going to break that up to make sure that we're following through with our timing and you're getting to everything in that time period? Closure. Were people involved? Get feedback. Ask them how they feel like the program is going. Perhaps this is a more formal evaluation. Maybe at the end of each session you're giving them a questionnaire. It can be more informal about summarizing and just kind of asking them how things are going. You can also do a quiz to see how much they learned throughout the session, right? All different kinds for evaluation there. So let's look at a session plan. So this session is titled, Don't Sit, Be Fit. So let's look at our behavioral objective. By the end of the lesson, 75% of students will be able to individually demonstrate all components of Dance 2. They are behaving. They are actually demonstrating a dance, right? and 75% of them will do that. Remember, it has to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So all of those are there in that objective. So don't forget that you're writing those to meet those SMART objectives. Cognitive. By the end of the lesson, the class will be able to identify 2 sedentary activities and 2 physical activities that can be done instead. Affective. The students will individually demonstrate respect by staying in a personal space throughout the lesson. Okay? And remember, those are our attitudes, beliefs, feelings. Those are those affective objectives. Our focus, we're looking at sedentary behaviors, right? Organization, they're going to do the activities individually in a personal space within the gym. Interest building, asking them who likes to watch TV or play on their iPad, right? And most everyone's going to say they do, and we're going to say this is a sedentary activity, right? This is that hook that kind of draws you in and brings you into that information. The activities, warm up, rock, paper, scissors, feet, right? We're playing a game. Introduction, we're talking about those sedentary activities and have brainstorming activities. Demonstration, so they're demonstrating dance 2. The students are going to practice dance 2. They're going to have a cool down and then applying all of that to a word search. Time schedule, it tells us what time constraints we have for each of those activities. Session closure, they're going to ask the group what this word sedentary means and ask the group why it's important to move instead of being sedentary. And then to evaluate, we're going to look at the number of students who were able to perform all components of the dance too, right? And that's to assess that behavioral objective. So we need to have the evaluation for each objective to make sure that we're meeting it. Because remember, our goal was 75% of the students would demonstrate dance too. So to evaluate it, we have to actually count how many students were able to perform dance 2. Group 2, or cognitive objective group, identifies 2 sedentary activities and 2 activities that can be substituted. So that is assessed in that closure activity and asking the group to identify those. Affective, students individually rate how respectful they were with the thumb. So that's an example of a session plan, and yours will look very similar to this. In your programs, you will need to actually identify what's in these activities, right? So in dance 2, we're choreographing a dance, and it includes all of these elements, right, to being active. So they included 4 squats, swiping right, swiping left, laying down, and it includes all of those things. So you have to be able to identify the actual items within your sessions, the actual activities. Here is the dance word search that they mentioned as part of one of their activities in their session plan, and you'll be including these in your program. So let's talk about 6 common mistakes, not specifying the objectives or what the participants will actually do, and it's not measurable or observable. So remember that we have to be able to evaluate whatever objective you write. The materials or resources are not there, so you have to include those. The session is not appropriate or not meeting the needs of the program goals and objectives. So remember, they all have to align. Participant activities, they don't contribute to direct and effective session objectives. So remember, those activities have to align with what we're actually trying to get from the session and then over through the program, if that makes sense. And then the lesson assessment is disconnected from the behaviors identified in the objectives. So remember, when we're evaluating, they have to match those objectives. So please, please, please read over these common mistakes, because as you're writing your session plans and your unit plan and all of these things, you want to make sure you're not falling into these common mistakes. And just note that session plans can be written a little bit differently. You see the format here is broken down a little bit differently, but all of the core content that we just talked about is listed. So very quickly, as I'm about to be cut off, I just want you guys to look at our program template. This is your final paper template. Check that out, because that's where you'll see your example of a unit plan and your sessions, and these are where you'll fill those out in your final program template. So just going over that. All right, guys, review all this content, get started thinking about your unit and your sessions plans, and start writing those down.